love fucking creepy wood trees. Like it sits so well in my spirit when it's just done right. All those creepy trees were just fucking wonderful.
Yeah, this definitely is like creepy tree heaven.
Yes,
like there are a lot of, and like not only individual trees, but like just groups of trees. Like
Just,
give me all them
how
trees.
Give
yeah,
me all of them trees.
give me all them
Like
trees.
I said, hiking.
Hello. Do you want to play a game?
What's your favorite scary movie?
Be afraid. Be very afraid.
See dead people.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Here's Johnny.
The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you!
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
Welcome to Talking Horror with Jamie and Nikisha.
Hi, I'm Jamie.
And I'm Nikisha, and this is Talking Horror with Jamie.
And Nikisha.
Where we share our love for all things scary and talk horror through the lens of human behavior. Welcome, everyone. All the fireworks, all the things. So exciting times. Well, first off, Jamie got a new microphone, so that's exciting. Hey, Amazon.
Shout out to Elgato. Sponsor us.
Please, I'll have to look into it now. See if I can get one of those. Because they look really cool. Go on our YouTube and then you can actually see it for yourself.
Oh, that's so pretty.
But also exciting because today we are talking about the 2017 British supernatural folk horror film, The Ritual. Ooh. Yes, so this film was directed by David Bruckner and written by Joe Barton and is based on a novel of the same name by Adam Neville, which I did not know that this was a book. Did y'all know?
No, I had no idea. No, I can't read.
Nope.
Oh, okay. That's why we watch movies. I can't read.
Oh, boy.
Except when we need subtitles, because always and forever #subtitle life. Yes. So The Ritual stars Rafe Spall, Arshur Ali, what a cool name, Robert James Collier, and Sam Troughton. Heavy spoilers for The Ritual. It is streaming on Netflix. If you have not seen it, like me, this was my first time watching it. Very
cool.
exciting times.
I'm genuinely excited to hear what you thought about this movie because I have a lot
same.
of opinions on this film.
Yeah. I'm excited to talk about it, of course. So again, heavy spoilers for this. If you have not seen it, press pause, go watch it, and then come back and listen to us talk about it. See if you agree with what we're saying. And Jamie, please hit us with those trigger warnings.
Heck yeah. This movie, if you hate hiking, this is just not a movie for you.
Top of the list
is hiking. It's a nerve.
But this movie also centers a lot around survivor's guilt. There is a very traumatic event, a violent traumatic event that takes place in the beginning of this movie that results in a death. And then subsequently there is a lot of disturbing imagery, dead animals, dead people, insides on the outside, a really terrifying creature. The creature design of this is really creeptastic.
So cool.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Some mummified individuals.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sacrifices.
Awesome yes. Shitty friends.
Oh man, shitty friends. Ooh boy.
We'll get into it.
Yeah, did I miss anything?
No.
I mean, like animal carcasses.
Yeah,
people
there's
hanging
like
from
death.
trees.
Mm-hmm. Like cult-like behavior.
Yeah,
Yes.
hinted at alcoholism, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But hiking's the number one.
But hiking
you were right to start with hiking.
Hiking,
sure.
Camping. If you're not an outdoorsy, woodsy person.
Yeah, compasses.
Broken compasses.
Yeah, bad dreams, peeing your pants.
Pee in your pants.
Oh my
yeah,
god.
absolutely.
Actually, no, that does really I think I've said that before. It really upsets me to watch
Yeah.
someone actively pee their pants. It
Yeah.
didn't bother me as much to see the aftermath of the pee on the
Okay.
pants.
But
But I
it's
don't
when you're seeing it.
when it's
in real
actively
Right, like it
happening, it
follows.
really upsets me. Yeah. Makes me
Yeah.
really, really upset.
Totally.
But yeah, that does happen. And like other wounds and things like that.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Great.
Yeah.
Well, before we get into all of that, because there's always a lot to discuss with these, producer Brian, please give us some words.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Hi, YouTube. If you're listening to us with your ears, you can also watch us with your eyes on YouTube. Check us out. We're at Talk Horror Pod, wherever you are on social media as well. So you can find us on TikTok. You can find us on Instagram as well as Twitter. We're probably most active on TikTok, second on Instagram, third on Twitter, if it matters to you. But yeah, find us there. We cover movies on those that outside of what we're doing on the platform. And as some of you may know that are longtime listeners, thank you. Jamie and I are expecting a little baby.
A little parasite.
A little
Aw.
parasite is growing. So we have a couple more episodes for you, but we're going to take a little bit of a break between this season 6 and next season 7. But the reason I'm bringing that up is because in between feedings, we're definitely going to be watching a lot of horror movies at home. And I'm going to try and review as many of them as I can in my very sleepwalky state. So definitely follow us on TikTok, because that's where I'll put all of those reviews. We're gonna try and watch everything that is released on Shudder and on demand and stuff like that, and then things that fill in. I'm really trying to fill the gaps of things that I haven't seen. I want to finish the Elm Street movies. We stopped after Dream Warrior.
I was gonna say all the Dream Kids. You stopped after
No,
that?
we didn't get into the Dream Kids, but maybe we should skip the Dream Kids with the new kid. But anyway, point being, check us out on all the social medias, because we'll be doing a lot of cool stuff there. And then we'll be back in the fall. Definitely, at the very least, we'll be back in October. But again, we have a couple more episodes here, but I'm just preparing you. But we have over 100 episodes for you to listen to, so get into it.
Yeah. Go back, listen to all this stuff. Get our listener numbers up for all the things.
And also
Thanks,
chat with us let us know what you want us to potentially cover, because I'm going to be building the schedule for the rest of the year. So we've had some amazing listeners reach out. We're going to end up doing Split. We're going to end up doing, I think Mama was suggested and Ma was suggested. I definitely want to do those. There's I have a list of the fantastic films that you've suggested, and we're definitely going to do them. And when we do them, when we do them, we'll definitely shout you out. But thank you so much for reaching out.
Yes, we appreciate it so much. Well, speaking of sitting at home and watching movies, I have to tell you guys, and speaking of social media got me one night. I was on Instagram. I couldn't even tell you what page it was. It was a suggested page that I wasn't even following. And this girl was like, you guys, you have to watch Lowlifes on Tubi. Have you heard of this at all, guys?
No. Lives or Low Lifes?
Lifes with an F. Yes.
No.
It is a horror movie on Tubi that came out this year. And I got and at 12:45 in the morning I started this movie. I do not want to tell you anything about it, because you just have to go in blind and just watch it. But just know that it is a Tubi movie, but probably one of the best Tubi movies that I have ever watched.
Really?
Wow.
Damn. Okay.
It's got, the only thing that I will say, there are so many insides on the outside. It's wild. And y'all know I love gory shit like that. And fulfilled everything for the whole hour and 30 minutes.
Okay.
Lowlifes on Tubi, you must watch. Must. Yeah.
Into it.
Yeah. So please let me know, listeners, let Brian know over social medias if you have also watched this, but I loved everything about it.
Okay.
Going blind. Jamie, please do not look up any.
I won't.
synopsis.
I'm not. I'm not.
Okay.
My hands are
cool.
off the keyboard.
but just let me know.
Okay.
It's Tubi level, you know, it's not going to change the world, but it was a great Tubi experience, and I'm really excited for Tubi to continue to come out because we've already covered Slay, which was a pretty great, you know,
It was
Tubi
great. I had a great
horror
time.
movie.
It was great. Oh yeah, for sure.
And I think that this is like 3 notches above Slay.
Great.
So
Awesome. I'm into
do
it.
that as you will.
Get into it.
And
Get
let me
into
know.
it.
Get into it. Yes.
Cool.
But yeah, have you guys watched anything this week?
I don't think so. I'm checking my letterbox again.
You did mention to me that you watched Platform 2 trailer, which I didn't even know there was going to be a second.
We watched a lot of
yeah.
trailers. We watched the new Alien Romulus trailer, which was awesome.
That looks
We
really
watched
good.
the new Beetlejuice trailer, which looks great.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen it.
And we watched the Platform 2 trailer, which is interesting because I don't remember. I forget if we talked about it on here, but I like the Platform, the first movie. The end is kind of convoluted to me, and I don't totally remember how it ends. But I love the concept, and everything leading up to the last 10 minutes was like very memorable. So I'm very much looking forward to getting back into that like socioeconomic, you know, allegory world.
Absolutely.
And so I'm super excited for that. It comes out in October. We watched that trailer. But
yeah, I remember watching it. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to move on, but I want to hear your thoughts.
Oh yeah, no, I just remembered that was like a top pandemic watch because whenever the watch parties, I did one with Aaron and one of our other friends, and we just like watch partied it on Netflix. But it was intense.
Yeah, it's a good one. I really like that. No, I think we mentioned it on the last episode. We watched The Watchers, which was not great, Bob. But have not haven't really watched much in terms of that since.
Yeah, great. Well, we watched The Ritual, so let's get into that. And we need a 2-minute plot summary of it. Get into it. So Mr. Brian is going to give us a 2-minute plot summary of The Ritual. Indeed. Jamie is going to time them.
What's the plot?
Heck yeah. All right. Producer Ryan, you ready to perform a little ritual for us?
Ooh.
But only 2 minutes or under?
Yes. I'll perform a very quick ritual.
All right.
Let me know. Count me down. Count me in. Ow.
All right. Ready, steady, go.
Okay, 4 friends from college are trying to figure, or 5 friends from college are trying to figure out where to go on, spoiler alert, where to go, like kind of on their like yearly trip together or whatever it is. And then they can't decide. The one friend, Rob, says he wants to go hiking, and everyone's like, that's so stupid. And anyway, they go into a liquor store, and Rob is killed in front of his friend, and his friend kind of hid away. Whereas Rob wouldn't give up his wedding ring, and he ended up being killed. Anyway, flash forward to 6 months later, and they are on this hiking trip, kind of in remembrance of him, the 4 of them. They're all not really enjoying it, but they do a nice ceremony to remember him, and there's clearly some tension in general. The Luke, who's the one who was in the liquor store with him, is clearly eaten up by his survivor's guilt and like, did he do enough? And the rest of the friends clearly like subconsciously like blame him or that he didn't help him. And so I wanted to set that up. But their dumb fucking friend Dom, who's a piece of shit, hurts his knee, and so they all decide to go through the woods, the forest, to get to the other side where their lodging is. Anyway, as they go through the forest, weird things happen. There's kind of a monster hunting them. It starts to rain, and they find a cabin. They stay in the cabin, and there's this weird like symbol thing upstairs. They all have these horrible nightmares. He is touched by this monster and starts bleeding. Anyway, the monster starts picking them off one by one in the woods, and then what they do is they end up, him and Dom are the only 2 final survivors, and then they end up in this like village in the middle of the woods, where they pray to like Loki's son, a deity, and they sacrifice hikers to him so that they can stay immortal. And they basically offer a space in their village for Luke, and Luke turns it down, and he escapes, and he's the only survivor.
And that's the plot.
Yeah. Great job.
Thank you.
Woo!
And obviously a lot of this is an allegory for survivor's guilt, and the monster represents kind of his inner
What?
demons and stuff like that. I know.
Your
It's
internal
crazy.
demons? Woo.
Yeah.
A lot.
Cool beans.
Fantastic. All right, well, let's get into it with our first segment, likes and gripes.
And now our likes and gripes.
Woohoo! So, since this is my first time watching it and you guys have seen it before, yes, I will start. So, yes, this is my first time watching this. I will start by saying that I absolutely love a hiking movie, and sometimes I do like a little hiking myself. I'm not gonna lie.
Sure.
But
Right.
also,
You're allowed.
yeah. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you for the validation. So it's always funny to me watching these types of movies because I just always think to myself, like, I will always stay on a trail, like, no matter what. And so it's funny watching these videos, and for whatever fucking reason it is, they got to go off the trail because what would be the movie if they stayed on the trail, Who knows what would happen? And that's a movie that I want to see. Be on the trail and something is still happening. That would be interesting. But anyway, that's another topic for another day.
Yeah.
First, it is so believable that these men in their 30s have a hard time planning trips with their friends, because that is literally me with my friends in 30s.
Yes.
We can never fucking plan a trip.
No, Ibiza.
It's just like we're all, have our lives and stuff, and it's like this is the most believable thing in this movie is the fact that they all can't agree of where they fucking go.
Actually, so Nikisha, one of my likes of this movie is that whole scene at the beginning where they each give a suggestion. One says Ibiza, one says Netherlands, Amsterdam. Like that, it's a fucking perfect scene in terms of setting up the characters without being like exposition heavy. You know who everybody is based on their suggestion, and you know exactly who Luke is at that time based on him turning all those things down. Like it's just an absolutely spectacular opening sequence in terms of getting to know these characters, and that really carries us through the rest of the movie.
Absolutely, because like you said, the dynamic is already set up without it having to be like, oh, and let's talk about your wife and your kids and why we can't go to this place because of I'm just going to suggest Las Vegas, and that will tell you a lot.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So yeah, I also agree. That's a great way of saying that. I agree with that 1,000%. And I also just love movies that have a built-in internal friend conflict, because even before the liquor scene happens and the first death happens, you can kind of see a little bit of the tension of like who they are. And I love that in movies because that just makes it more realistic. Like things are not going to be perfect all the time. And we all have these different friends groups, and it's just like, who are the people who are actually like friends, and then who are the ones that are like, oh well, I knew this person from college and so that's why they're in the friend group. I knew this person from work, that's why they're in the friend group. But that doesn't mean like these two are friends with each other, if that makes sense.
Totally. And I also think that it really does a good job in those like literally 10 minutes, like from the title card back to the opening of the movie, like those 10 minutes. I think it also does a really good job of showing like where all these men are in their life too. And that also fits into like what you said, Nikisha, where they're suggesting. But even I think Rob is the one who dies in the liquor store, and and when they first get into the liquor store, that moment where he's like where Luke is like, he's like a shithead now or whatever it is, and he's like, you mean he grew up? Like clearly that Luke is the one who like doesn't have a significant other, hasn't really found his maturity yet, is still like he's that one friend you always have with like still in college mode. And like it just like takes a little bit longer to get out of that, which is fine. But like that moment then followed by that silence where like he sees the clerk behind the desk beaten up, like is just like, it's so nice that they presented that question and then they cut away from it immediately, because in those two lines you fully understand the relationship of these guys as well.
Exactly. And to your point about Rob, him being the only one that would actually go into the liquor store with Luke because everyone else
Yeah.
is like,
I'm not
no.
feeding this beast.
Exactly. So it's
Yeah.
like, you know, the type of person that Rob is, and he's the one that's really holding the group together.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
for him to be the one that loses his life first, like that is a great catalyst into like where we get to with all of them like 6 months later. So it's just like
Totally.
all that to say is like the first 10 minutes of this is great, guys.
It's so good.
It really is. It's a great setup.
It's a great setup. Yeah, so then we, you know, cut to and we're there, and you know, I don't know how to formulate properly like uh a gripe that I had with this movie because I really enjoyed everything about it. I loved the monster. I thought that it was a great design. I loved the cinematography because I just love landscape scenes. And so I just thought that those were shot so beautifully.
Yeah. This is a really
like,
gorgeous movie.
It is. It really is just a gorgeous movie to look at. Yeah.
That one shot of all the trees and you see something moving behind them and then it's the guys walking towards the camera is an exceptional shot and just shows you how confusing the woods can truly be.
Absolutely. Like you are
And
literally
beautiful.
lost in the midst of everything. And those, like you said, Brian, that was one of also my likes, the shot where they're like zooming in. I just love a shot where everything is still, but they're zooming in on one thing. The actors are moving out of the frame, but we're still zooming in on something. And I think that's the moment where that monster is kind of in the back and then it moves a little bit. And
there's the monster one. Yeah. That one's real good. Where he's by himself in those trees.
Yes.
When he goes up to the ridge and he like screams because totally. That's
Yeah.
another good one.
I love those scenes. There was just moments where I don't want to say it was slow, but there are other movies that I just felt like did the whole hike and in the woods thing better. And I have that in my suggestions, which is why I'm saying I don't know how to formulate like a gripe. I just feel like this was a great movie, but there are other movies who have done this this subgenre of hiking and getting lost in the woods better. That I would watch over this. But overall, I had a great time watching it. I just looking at my notes. One of my favorite scenes talking about frames and stuff was when they are in the cabin and Luke is having the dream sequence, and you don't really know if we're in a dream or not, like after he wakes up, and then that's when like the other guy's waking up and he peed his pants, and the other guy's Dom is waking up and he's like screaming for his wife Gail and all this stuff like that. But there's a moment where the lights pop up and it looks like they're in the daytime, but it's actually the lights of the convenience store because it's a dream. That whole thing was fantastic.
And then when he like walks into the convenience store, like the ground is still the earth from the woods. And man, so good. The fact that this movie never forgets about his trauma, and and a lot of movies forget about the trauma. This one, that is the like constant throughout this movie. And like bringing back the liquor store over and over again every time that he is faced, whether it's specifically the monster bringing it out or whether it is like him being in an intense moment of trauma and like that's what he goes back to. I think that is really well done. I also think Rafe Spall's acting, especially at the beginning of this movie where all of his friends are more talky and he's silent those 6 months after the incident, like you can't, he's so magnetic in this role at some points that you can't stop looking at him and what's happening in his internal life. And that in essence actually helps some of the scares at the beginning of this movie because you're so zoned in and focused on him that a jump scare you should see coming a mile away like gets you because you're kind of paying attention to him and what he's going through. I just think it's a really well directed movie.
And he's a well-written character too, because you can see the conflict, especially every time one of the other friends is picked off. it's not one of those like, okay, I experienced this with Rob, so now I'm gonna be the one that's gonna always help all of my friends all the time. He still has that conflict of like trying to live, but he is the only one that is trying to help his friends, which I also thought was genius, that now his other friends are being put in the same situation of, are they going to help of the friend that has been taken by the monster, or are they going to think about themselves and try to get to safety first? And I just love that it brings that situation to the forefront for all of them, so that's not just like Luke having to deal with that. It's now it's like, look, y'all, this is not an easy decision to make.
Absolutely. I literally said that out loud while we were watching the movie. I was just like, yeah, it's really fucking easy for you in one circumstance to like shit talk your friend for making, quote, the wrong choice. And then when you are facing the same danger, you are fucking hiding. Like you are like, I'm not going to say that you're a coward, because however we react to like fear and danger is how we like our adrenaline pumping and like fight or flight. So like it just speaks to like how unfair it is to judge someone for whatever decision they're making in that moment to stay safe. And quite frankly, I also said this to Brian while we were watching it. I turned to him in the beginning of this movie and I said, if somebody ever tried to rob you and was asking you for your wedding ring, please fucking give it to them.
Just give
it is not worth dying over. Like, like we remain married regardless of whether or not you retain this item.
Totally.
Yes. Exactly. And like I you know, I'm not gonna obviously blame the person for like choosing to keep it, but like I feel like it's so easy again. And even watching this movie, like I feel like it's the same thing where it's like me as an observer, like I might make different choices, but I don't know how I would actually genuinely react in any of these scenarios.
100%.
And that's why it's so easy for us to watch these things and yell at our screens and be like, oh my God, you're why are you going into the basement? Why are you making these choices? But it's like, I don't know what the fuck I would do in any of these circumstances. And like that feels very real and well represented in this movie.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And we can talk more about this because it's both in my likes and my gripes. The decision to go through the woods, I believed it. Like I in my gripes, I wrote like, did we need more of a conversation about them going through the woods? But I also believed it because, and here's why. And maybe I'm totally wrong, but this is why I believed it. I think that Luke was in no place to make an argument. Luke is just like, fine, we'll fucking do whatever. Even though he's the one who like doesn't want to go into the woods. Right. Because he doesn't want to provoke his friends. Dom is a piece of shit and he just wanted to go, to go the faster way. Also, I don't remember, but I think he starts walking on his own, and Dom forces these people into decisions both in the beginning and in the middle when he starts walking down the trail, if you will. So it kind of all just like happened. And like there was no like decision like we're doing this. They all just kind of walked through into the woods. And I kind of believe that more than if they had a full conversation and weighed the pros and the cons and decided to go through the woods. It felt like a very real decision a group of frustrated, ego-driven males would make when one of their friends is hurt in that moment. Like I truly believed the ego would allow them to think that they could be fine walking through those woods.
Sure.
Yeah. And I even wrote down the quote because everyone was kind of thinking like, okay, yes, we should go. But then they kind of get there and shit is going south and they're like, okay, well, maybe not. And I forgot who said it. It might've been Dom. But someone said if the shortcut was a shortcut, it wouldn't be called a shortcut. It'd be called a route.
Yes. I wrote that down too. That's one of my quotes. Dom did say it.
Okay. Yes. And then it's just so interesting that they're all kind of going through these different, like, should we not? What would be easiest? Well, we're all together and Dom is hurt. Okay. So let's like go through this. But it is that moment, I think still though, when the first shit happens that you have to just be like, because Luke said, why don't we in the morning just go back the way that we came?
Yeah, because he had that bad vibes. Totally.
And then at that point, it's like, okay, guys, like y'all just have all these dreams. Let's go back.
So, but at that point, Yeah, at that point, I actually loved that the movie made the decision to have Dom just walk because they're not going to leave their friend. So Dom actually forces them to do that as opposed to leave the woods. So
Right.
to me, Dom is 100% at fault for this entire film happening.
Absolutely. And I definitely said I did not think Dom was going to last this long because he's like the injured one. And usually
Yeah,
they're like the first
totally.
to go.
And honestly, the another thing I like about this movie, only because you brought it up, Nikisha, is the it definitely subverted expectations by killing his best friend first.
Yes.
I really expected him and Downton Abbey guy to last to the end. I didn't expect, but I think narratively, so that's stereotypically like what we think is going to stereotypically happen in a movie like this.
Yes.
But narratively, because Dom was the bigger piece of shit in this movie, and he and Luke were kind of at odds a lot.
Most at odds.
Yeah, having them be the final two in that cabin, and like Dom kind of like understand that he was in the wrong, and then just kind of accept that he was going to be sacrificed, was a lot more satisfying than like two friends who were always on the same page saying goodbye to each other.
I agree with that. I think that is definitely a thing that makes you more invested. In it, because then, like you said, there's more of a turnaround of like Dom's feelings about things because of that. Yeah, as opposed to him just being a piece of shit and then dying, and then you're like, okay, he's gone.
and also, Dom is the one who said like you didn't do anything. Like, you know, when they had that amazing scene, that fight in the woods they have, which is an incredible scene. You know. And then at the end when both friends die and it's only him and Dom, and he finds Dom hiding behind like the tree and whatnot, and then but then it's kind of like that thing where it's like you're like Nikisha, you mentioned like your friends, you have friend groups within friend groups. So the relationship between Dom and Luke in that moment is that Dom becomes the beta, and in moments of true fear, Dom is the beta and Luke becomes the alpha in terms of like who's going to like be the helper and who's going to be the follower. And I think in those moments, Dom like realizes that like we're relating that back to all of a sudden Dom is now in the Luke position in the liquor store, and Luke is in the Robert position in the liquor store. And I think that kind of foil is very effective in this movie.
Absolutely. No, I agree with that a lot. And yeah, it just made me so much more invested in like their actual story. I think going back to what I talked about with my gripe, I put in my likes that I like that we don't really see the monster a lot, not really until the end. And then you get this like grand, and it's terrifying. And I love the design of it. And I thought it was like perfect and creepy. I think that in some of the other movies that I've seen that are like this, there's more action that happens that I maybe just was missing a little bit more of. But I think that's just a personal preference, not necessarily a gripe. So I'll just put it out as that. I just would have liked to have seen a little bit more action as far as like things happening in the woods to these people. But I wouldn't want to sacrifice all the relationship building that I was getting in this movie because I really, really enjoyed all that. And I thought that made for a really good movie.
These actors felt like they were biting into like a juicy fruit. You know, not the gum, but like a fruit that is juicy, like
like a peach.
Just clarify.
Like I could imagine, I get it like a plum. Like I can imagine them getting this script and being like, "Oh, I can do a lot with this character in a movie that you usually would throw my character to the side." Because even the Phil, the character who ends up praying to the deity, but like in his sleep. Like clearly that actor made a choice where him praying to a deity that maybe wasn't his own really messed with him. And I like that we don't, except for Luke, who's our main character, and when we're following, I really like that we never really, except for Dom towards the end, we never really know what Phil and what Hutch's dreams kind of are. At least Hutch. And I like that. That feels very Hell House LLC, where we don't know the secret.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes. Oh, that was such a great moment.
The movie's so good.
Yeah, I think that's all that I have in my likes and gripes. Like I really, really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was shot beautifully. The acting was fucking phenomenal. The relationships were great. Yeah, so the only thing was, and the last thing I'll say is that, well, two things. I love fucking creepy wood trees. Like, it sits so well in my spirit when it's just done right. All those creepy trees were just fucking wonderful.
Yeah, this definitely is like creepy tree heaven.
Yes,
Like, there are a lot of, and like, not only individual trees, but like just groups of trees. Like,
Just,
give me all
ooh,
them
how scary.
trees.
Give me
Yeah.
all
A lot
of them
of trees.
trees.
Give me all them
Like
trees.
I said, hiking.
Hiking.
Except
Trigger
hiking.
warning. Except
But
for
the
hiking.
trees.
Right.
And then the second thing that I was going to say, and that would be off from Likes and Gripes. I love the reference to the Appalachian Mountains and the hillbillies, and then for them to experience something similar.
I thought that was
Yes.
so
genius. So good. But they're like, Sweden isn't like that. It's like, we're gonna be fine. It's like, okay, guys, here we are.
I love that.
But yeah, that's all. I really had a good time watching this. I liked it a lot. Brian or Jamie, go ahead.
Go for it, Jamie.
Hello. I've seen this movie before.
Great.
I really like this movie. I like just some of the stuff that we were already talking about. I don't really have too many gripes. I just feel like, man, David Bruckner is really able to capture certain like states of being incredibly well. Like, this whole movie is about survivor's guilt, and just all of the visuals, like we were talking about earlier, with kind of like our protagonist finding himself back in the store over and over again, or elements of the store over and over again. The nightmares that he's having, like, all just his entire like behavior change after his friend dies is so striking. I just feel like they were, like Brian was saying, like they were just given a lot to work with and really just chewed on it and like gave us whatever that was. That's
it's that.
Yeah. And it really just like gets right to the point. Like, this is definitely one of the better, like one of the top, I would say, like kind of setting up the story in the beginning, the first like 10 minutes of a movie, like truly, and like I think someone else said this too, like you don't need a lot of exposition to get there. It just like presents it, and like it all happens, and it's very disturbing, and like we go with it. And there's like a couple other movies, I'm sure, when we get into suggestions, that like do kind of similar things. But yeah, I appreciate this one for the way that it does it. I also I don't remember exactly what the jump scare was, but I did write down that we both got jump scared by the dog. Was it the dead dog?
So we got jump scared. So this is what I was referring to earlier. The jump scare that really got us was the first animal that they saw in the trees.
Oh yeah, because they were just talking.
Yes.
And like you didn't realize like nothing bad had happened yet, and then all of a sudden it just like smacks you in the face. And we both kind of jumped back and like looked at each other of like, oh right, I forgot this movie is kind of unsettling and scary.
Yeah. And that comes from them all talking in the woods and us just being locked in on Luke's inner life and grief. So I was paying attention to kind of like what this poor man is going through. And because they never paint the picture that he's like a bad person, he just was stunted in terms of his maturity. And then that situation happened. And like now he's a man trying to work through watching the death of his best friend in front of his eyes and feeling the survivor's guilt. And so like I'm just really invested in this character, and then all of a sudden when you're paying attention to that thing, you know the other jump scare comes in, and it really gets you because you're not looking for the jump scare in that moment. You're really focused on the emotional core of the movie that is presented by Bruckner.
Yes. And I will say a smart decision was made in that moment where I was like, yes, good job, character, was when I think it was Luke who said, we need to leave because this thing is still bleeding. So that means this is fresh and we need to go. And I said, absolutely, this is correct. Yes.
Yeah. And I think that setting up Luke as kind of even though the one who's like, he's really internal in terms of like, introverted in these moments because of what he's dealing with. I like that he's the one who's clear-headed enough to see the details, and he's the
Absolutely.
one who wants to leave the woods, but he doesn't want to create any tension with his friend, so he doesn't fight for it because he
Right.
knows that the conversation that eventually does happen is going to happen. Like when
Yeah.
he's like what the fuck did you say? Like what did you say to
Yeah.
me? Like that
He's
whole
so worried about that conversation happening that
Mhm.
he's just yesing every stupid thing that they suggest because
Right.
he would rather internalize his guilt than hear what they think about him, which is
Yes.
exactly what he thinks they're going to think about him.
Also,
Right.
he has nothing, and I mean this in like the most general movie way, but like
General movie?
general movie, he has nothing to live for. Meaning he's got no significant others, no kids. The other ones do. So like and he's with this horrible guilt. So if something kills him in these woods, like in that moment he's probably like whatever because like it is what it is like but like he also finds his will to live as we go through the movie as well, so that's another kind of growth that character has in some ways, at least from those decision making moments.
I don't know if I feel like he's like kind of checked out in that way. I feel like it's more of just like going along with the group because he doesn't want to be the source of tension. Like
Sure.
if he is the one that is like instigating anything, it will naturally lead to that conversation that he doesn't want to have. But
Mhm.
I don't, only because like every time he is encountering something, he's still really trying to like stay alive. Like he's still really driven by like trying to survive. Like when they find the house at first and he's the one that like outside kind of like I think I saw something, and everyone kind of dismisses him.
Yeah, that's true.
So I
That's
do
a good
feel
point.
like I feel like part of that is also, he experienced a traumatic event, and we've talked before about post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, but like he's very hypervigilant, which is one of the symptoms of PTSD. So he's like super constantly on edge, I think, as well, just about their surroundings and everything. So even if internally he's like, this is a terrible idea and we shouldn't be taking this quote shortcut, he goes along with it because of the guilt, and then is still very much just like on edge constantly after like the first couple of encounters, just to like make sure that they are safe and okay, or at least that like he's safe and okay. So I feel like that's also like another piece that we get that other people are not really taking as seriously.
Yeah. Which I didn't
And
even think about
yeah.
the connection of PTSD and being hyper vigilant, which I think is like a great way to look at it.
Yeah.
Because like of course you've experienced this thing, and so now you are on edge about like
Yeah.
your surroundings and what could happen because of that. But I never put that two together, and that makes total sense.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like because he has that experience, he's now just like alert to everything else in a way that like the rest of them aren't, and they're all like kind of doody heads in their own way, like we mentioned. It also feels very much this is like a totally different tone of a movie. However, I do feel like it has a similarity in terms of them all coming together, like Bodies does, because it's like a group of friends that probably should not fucking be friends anymore, but
Yeah.
are because of time and now because of a tragedy. And so
Sure.
like that is also bringing them together, but like they are not kind to each other. They seemingly like don't really care about one another. Like there's just so much like conflict there, but they're still doing this thing because it's the thing that they were planning on doing, and they have to honor their friend. So like that's what's gonna keep this going, essentially. But I also, there's just a lot of like people things that I find really fascinating in this. I like how after they go to the cabin, and then like the morning happens and they're all just like kind of really frazzled. I really like how they all handle it so differently. And again, it's just speaking to like all of their personalities, but like one of them is just like, I just want to talk about this. Like, we have to fucking talk about what just happened. And
Mhm.
like, you know, like you have like denial, you have like, you know, just shutting down completely. Like, it's so interesting to get such different responses to essentially like the same scary, like they all had nightmares, and now we're all reacting very differently.
Mhm.
So again, it's just like another really, I think, interesting way to depict like the spectrum of human behavior after like scary things happen, that not everybody's going to respond in the same exact way. And again, it like gives us more intel and insight into who these characters are, but also I think is representative in a really realistic peopling way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's interesting that like the cabin scene, like in hindsight, was the monster kind of testing um their uh uh the want of them to be immortal, in terms of like who's worthy of kind of being the like welcomed into the village and being offered the immortality based on their hearts or based on their psyche, you know. And interesting that that because of his survivor's guilt and what he's going through, I think there's a line there, it's like, no pain no death, like your pain is great, or something like that,
That's
where
what I was
like
gonna ask.
the
Yeah.
pain allows for him to like live forever, like, or gives him the opportunity to. I just think I don't fully, I haven't like, I don't, I just like that concept in general.
It also feels like deeply fucked up because like there's something there about like, oh, the person who's like carrying this like deep trauma and guilt, is required to live with it forever. Like, how fucked up. Like, it's just like that's devastating. And I think because they also have this throwaway of how this is a godlike entity that's an offspring of Loki, and Loki is supposed, I mean, like, Loki is a god, is supposed to be the like
God of mischief.
yeah,
Yeah.
like this feels like a like a monkey's paw kind of vibe, where it's like,
Yeah.
oh, you get to be immortal, but like you have to live with the worst thing that's ever happened to you forever. Like you don't even get to like escape the carrying this wound through death. So I feel like that's really interesting, that like that's the weight of like how this creature is making this decision, and of course picks the person who's like really just in it and like going through it. So yeah, that's also really fascinating.
Yeah.
Any
other likes?
I can't think of anything. I guess I also do like the kind of hallucination like effect that the creature has, where before you see the creature like fully come out of the woods, when they are like
sacrificing
at the
Dom or something.
yeah, I forget, like they're just like in this little place where the cult people are. I don't know how else to describe that, but
the cul-de-sac.
Screaming. But I like it. The cul-de-sac. Yes.
Boo. Anyway, that like instead of seeing the monster at first, he sees like his wife.
He sees Gale.
Yeah, he sees Gale.
Yeah, but then he does see the monster. So it's also like, what was the point of comforting him and then switching it and then like showing its true self in like a very disturbing way? So that's horrifying.
Definitely.
But
truly,
like,
it's like
yeah, it
getting
was
your
just
hopes up, and
yeah,
then it's for
to then fuck with you. Like, this is just like a creature that just like fucks with you. Like, it's very, I mean, it is very Loki coded, so it's
exactly.
but yeah, I mean, I really liked, I did like that, you know, because it makes you wonder, is the are the visualizations of the survivor's guilt fueled by the creature, or fueled by just like his own mind. And like, quite frankly, I have no idea. Like, I
Mhm.
don't know if he, like, is it perhaps enhanced by this creature? I think so. But
Yeah.
he's like, the way that he's experiencing it, like, could it just be him conjuring these images up through nightmares and flashbacks? Like, that may very well be true, because that's kind of what
Mhm.
it's like. Again, like, this is like a trauma response.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's very cool to also think that, like, is the creature like planting these disturbing visualizations for other people to like confuse them, and then like make it more challenging for them to like
Mm.
Right.
come to terms with all of that. But yeah, I really like this movie. I don't really think I have any complaints unless someone else says something, and then I'll be like, yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. Brian?
Yeah, I agree completely with both of you. Um, I that I just want to go back to the liquor store scene at the beginning. I think it's so well directed, and the tension is perfect, and it truly is devastating. And the blows he takes to the head like
Ugh.
feel like 1,000 pounds, like they feel like a heavy weight. And I think that's really, really good in
Mhm.
general. Um, Again, I really like the cinematography in this film. I think it's a beautifully shot film. I think it shows both the beauty and the horror of the woods simultaneously, and I think that's really impressive. um
Mhm.
I loved all of the liquor store and the wood stuff. I really appreciated that. You could really feel their frustration a lot in this movie, and I think that that was a really impressive way to watch this movie, or impressive feat in having us watch the movie in that way. That scene with Dom where you think it's all my fault and then he punches Dom, you're not my
Mhm.
fucking friend anymore, is like really good. I like,
Yeah.
that's a really good scene. In any movie that would be a good scene, but it works
Mhm.
really well here. I love when he finally gets to the top of the ridge and he can see the lights from the lodge, and then
Mhm.
he starts to like look over the rest of the forest and he sees the fire from the village and stuff like
Yeah.
that. That was just like, that's a chilling sequence. That's really, really good. And I think one of my favorite shots of the movie is when he gets knocked out and then he's brought into the village, into the cabin, and that whole sequence of him figuring out where he is and what's happening is shown from that upside down camera point of view shot, where like
Mhm.
we're really in his shoes, upside down, trying to figure out where he is. And I thought that was just really, really well done. I loved the dead people in the trees, like they just didn't see it before. I
Oh,
loved the like zombie people who live forever that are upstairs, but because you live forever, like very similar to Death Becomes Her type of thing,
rough.
where like they're still functioning, but like you just never die. And even
Right.
if you're just like this like mummified skeleton, whatever. And the best part of the whole movie
Gross.
is when he punches the old woman.
Oh, I forgot about
Oh
that.
my god.
I love
Yeah.
a good old person punching in a film.
You said, "Get out of my way, lady. I
Yeah,
have
like
things to do."
that was great. Um,
Oh,
my
so good.
only my only gripe with this movie is I do think that the end in the village is like 5 or 10 minutes too long.
Mm.
I think that I just I think that there's, it kind of slows down again. And like, while when he and Dom are in the being held together, like I think I needed a faster pace for me personally.
Yeah.
Even though we get the emotional beats that we need, I do think that like I think the pacing could have been a little bit faster at the end there. um but outside of that, I really like this movie. um
Yeah.
and then my other quotes that I have that I picked up on are the one that Nikisha mentioned. If a shortcut was actually a shortcut, it will be called a route.
Mhm.
Um, when Dom says now he's got some fight in him to set him off is an
Mhm.
amazing line to like start that scene. Um,
Yeah.
you know what else has walking trails? Pubs. Great line. And then, well, this is clearly the house we're gonna get murdered in.
Yes.
Like
like,
a lot
listen
of
to
the
that.
lines in this felt like real human beings saying real human being things in these extreme circumstances.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Cool. That's my likes and gripes. So I dig
Yeah.
this.
I do want to add to, because I think I agree with you, Brian, on the village scene, because when they take Dom for the first time and you're hearing him being tortured, but then they bring him back, I'm like, oh, if y'all took him, like, this needs to be done. So I think if they
Mhm.
like took out that scene and just went straight to like they're sacrificing Dom and he
That
sees his
same
wife,
night.
and then
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And you could
I
still
think that
have the moment. I agree. I
right,
agree with that. Yeah,
yeah,
totally. But it doesn't
um,
ruin the movie for me. But, it's a nitty gritty, picky gripe because I
for
like
sure.
this movie so much.
No, but yeah, I agree with that. I think that totally makes sense in it. Great. So let's move on to our next section. Brains.
Tasty.
Okay, so I've already said that I am like obsessed with the idea of like friend groups and dynamics within these movies, but I also just really enjoyed like the idea of still being friends with someone that you're still kind of dealing with how you even feel about them as a person, but are in your friend group and you just kind of act like everything is okay because they're in the friend group. So my question to you is, can a friendship still be considered healthy even if you have those kinds of reservations about your friend, and especially if you're not even communicating those reservations, like would it still be considered a healthy friendship?
Yeah. A good question. Good question.
Yay,
Good question. Good question.
I mean, I feel like it definitely depends on like what do you have reservations about? Like what are the
Mm,
things that are kind of making it difficult to have more open communication with one another? Like
yeah.
is it values based stuff that are being crossed, and if so,
Hmm.
like how do you move forward if you feel like you are no longer aligned with those values? And again,
Hmm.
then what is like the purpose of like maintaining that relationship? um
Right.
and I mean, maybe there are some relationships that serve some people based on certain dynamics and things like that, but i I do imagine if someone like straight up has reservations about whether or not that relationship should continue, that's
Hmm.
probably indicative of like maybe this isn't really the best, or perhaps
Right.
we shouldn't be friends for much
Yeah.
longer.
Because it
um
reminds me of when we were talking about with bodies, bodies, bodies too, of just like, or even just what we talked about earlier of friends growing up and growing apart, but still
mhm.
feeling like you just kind of have to be together. But it's like if you grow up to be different people, like there's no obligation for you to still be friends. Like
Mhm.
the the years shouldn't hold that much weight of you like sticking with someone if, like you said, it's a values thing or
Yeah,
whatever it is about those reservations. But yeah.
absolutely. And like, yeah, there's, I think, recognizing that people naturally grow apart over time,
Hmm.
that's like normal, that like none of us are kind of holding the same space and like are the same people forever and ever. Like we learn, we grow, like, past versions of Jamie, I don't even know her. I don't claim
Real
her.
talk.
Um And
Real
so,
talk.
even though I had this conversation with a friend of mine, shout out to Micaiah, and they said, if it wasn't for past versions of you, then like we wouldn't have connected and that wouldn't bring us to today, which was a very kind thing to say. But I think
Yeah.
that like that's an example of a friendship that like we've both grown, but we continue to grow on like the same path. And then there are other
Yes.
friendships where there's growth that happens, but you can still grow apart. And so like just because you have time invested in relationships is not the only marker of a solid friendship, I would say.
Yeah.
Like I've made mistakes in my relationships with people. Other people have made mistakes with me. Like, we are human, and that is
Right.
understandable. And so I think it's like, how do we move forward from these? Are there places to still move forward, or are there lines that have been crossed that can't be uncrossed? Like, I think, context is important in things, but I I I definitely think, like, just because you've known someone for a really long time, that in and of itself is not like the only indicator that that you have a healthy friendship.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. I feel like there's some people who need to hear that. So I'm glad that you said that, Jamie. Yes, yes.
Hey,
All great
you,
things.
whoever you
Hey,
are.
yes.
I'm not calling anyone specific out, blah,
No.
blah, blah. But if this
This is all
message is speaking
helpful.
to you,
Yes.
then I hope that that's helpful to hear, because I do think that, like, people feel badly about ending relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I think, like, and also, if you're in therapy, think about how therapy is a relationship. And
Mm.
so you can use your therapy relationship to, like, model healthy relationship dynamics and model open communication. And if
Yeah.
you are having reservations about a relationship, like, therapy is a really great space to kind of, like, explore some of that, and, like, and even, like, role play how you might want to communicate certain things. um if you did, like, should I continue this relationship? And, like, I think a lot about the role of therapy as a space to, like, really practice
Mm-hmm.
relationship stuff, that,
Mm-hmm.
like, obviously when we're just navigating the world, we're just navigating the world, so we're not, like, practicing anything, we're just
Right.
living it. But, like, beginnings and endings are a little bit more formalized in, like, the therapy relationship, but they're very important because we don't often get formal beginnings and endings in any other relationship. I would say,
Yeah.
especially endings. Like, termination is, like, a thing in therapy, and it's really important because it is this, like, super, like, special space where you get to talk about, like, wrapping things up in a way that, again, with, I would say, a lot of other relationship dynamics, we don't always have not only that closure, but just, like, this really open conversation about, like, a
Right.
relationship coming to an end.
Yeah.
So if you're in therapy, that's something that I encourage you to think about. I know sometimes we want to ghost our therapists. I myself have ghosted a therapist or two. Do
Yeah.
what feels comfortable for you, but if you have a good relationship with a therapist that, like, is ever coming to an end, really, I would highly encourage you to, like, stick it out, make it to that point, and, like, lean
Mm-hmm.
into that ending, because there's so few times that we actually get to have that, like, really formal space, and it's a great way to, like, model a healthy relationship dynamic that you can continue to model in other relationships.
Absolutely. And I love what you talk about, just the practice of it all too, because it to have a scenario and to figure out what you want to say. I mean, a lot of the times we're thinking in our brain like what we want to say for a conversation anyway. It's like, use your therapist and, like, have that kind of back and forth and see. Because I know my therapist also likes to tell me too. It's like, um, what do you think is the worst that could happen? And, like, let's go
Mm,
down that rabbit hole, because then it just kind of, like, prepares you of, like, oh, this is not as bad as you think that it is, or it could be, so yeah, love that.
yeah.
Right. Second question. So we were talking about survivor's guilt and, the main character dealing with that, and how he has been dealing with that while they're hiking, is the dreams that he's having, and, like, always reliving kind of being in the convenience store and all this stuff like that. So can you just talk to us as a therapist about some ways that you've seen, like, guilt kind of manifest itself within clients that you've worked with? And have you ever experienced, like, clients who have had that, like, survivor guilt with manifest itself in dreams, and maybe some things that you've said to kind of help them out of that?
Yeah. I mean, I think that, like, perhaps, well, I think that there's some overlap of, like, survivor's guilt and PTSD that's happening in this movie. And
Mm,
I would imagine that, like, in a lot of circumstances, the likely survivor's guilt that you're having is coming from surviving a traumatic event.
yeah.
And so I think that in terms of like PTSD specifically symptoms, like nightmares and flashbacks, like is a very specific like marker of having experienced trauma. I think with survivor's guilt, like there's a lot of like self punishment involved.
Yes.
Like I think with any kind of guilt there's a lot of self-punishment that comes up for folks, because guilt in and of itself, like when you think I sometimes think about like what's the utility of guilt when we do feel it, and I think a lot of times guilt is rooted in like we made a mistake, we made like there was an error, we are also human, so we are prone to making mistakes, but like acknowledging the mistake that we made, and then like owning it, like accepting responsibility for it, and also like whatever we can do kind of moving forward to not make that same mistake again.
Yeah.
But sometimes we do all of those things and then we continue to feel this like ongoing feeling of like, I shouldn't have done that. That was wrong. And like kind of get stuck in this like self-punishment space.
Right.
Survivor's guilt is a little bit different, where it's like you're feeling that sense of guilt after not like after surviving this whatever the traumatic event is. It isn't necessarily just rooted in like death, so it's not just like related to loss of life, it could be other things too. But basically it's like just the idea that like it didn't happen to you primarily, and
Yeah.
like you now are kind of like living ongoing with the weight of that, just with the weight of the idea of that. And I think like there is a lot of overlap with PTSD, with depression. Also, like, you know, there's a lot of self-criticism when it comes to depression. So
Yes.
that, you know, it's like a lot of these things that I think are all really overlapping. Um, but I think that like with the overlaps, I think that like flashbacks and nightmares can certainly be a part of the survivor's guilt experience. That might even be like on the more extreme ends. I do
Okay.
think that like just being all consumed by thinking about it, like it's just like it's all you can really think about, you're ruminating on it constantly, or like feeling like I should have done more, like I didn't do enough, and like being really stuck on that too. And like those thoughts I feel like are really punishing because like you can't go back and change the past. You can't undo what happened. And so how do you own and like allow yourself to feel what you feel without like getting stuck in the like self-punishment and like isolating yourself, or you know, any other potential like consequence of like really just reliving those things over and over again.
Yeah.
Which is something I think about a lot, where it's like you can feel your feelings but you don't have to punish yourself forever,
Right.
in different experiences. And like and what's the difference between those things? I think like there's people always joke about like, "Ugh, all these therapists are just like feel your feelings," but like what the fuck does that mean? Like sometimes it just means like, what are you feeling? Like name it, like just like acknowledge it. Like what is it? How do you identify it? How do you like physically feel it in your body? Like how is
Yes.
it like manifesting for you? Like I think and I myself am guilty of this, for lack of a better word, but like I do this where it's like avoid avoid thinking about like painful things. Like, yeah, duh, I don't want to fucking think about bad things, so I'll do
Absolutely.
all I can to distract myself.
Right.
But the problem is like those feelings never really go away, so it is
Exactly.
important to like give space to thinking about it, and not in like, again, not in a punishing way. So it's like, what is the line? What is like, when do you feel like you might have some capacity to like sit with it a little bit? It doesn't have to be like grueling hours on end where you're only thinking about it, but like if you're feeling, and if you are feeling at like a 10 out of 10 the worst you're feeling, maybe it's not the best time to like start like sitting in you're probably in your feelings, you're probably feeling real
You're already
bad.
there. Yes.
Yeah. And so like at that point it's like, how can you actually like get out of that place so that
Right.
you're a little bit more okay to then like kind of process.
Right.
You're not going to do like that much processing when you're at the 10 out of 10. So I think it depends on like where are you at in any given moment.
Mhm.
Is like I would also say that distractions are probably more helpful in a 10 out of 10 moment because you have to like get out of that space. But
Right.
if you're feeling like you have some capacity to like really be mindful and like sit with what's going on, give yourself some space to do that. It doesn't have to be like again forever. It can be like 5 minutes in a day. I bet that you can find 5 minutes in a single day to give yourself just to reflect and be like, how am I feeling today? Like, how do I know how I'm feeling? Like, am I feeling anything weird in my body? Like, I personally like to do like kind of body scanning stuff and just like
Mm.
paying attention to where you might be holding tension unexpectedly,
Mhm.
or like other weird things that you might not be noticing. Like if you ever have a stomach ache, and like a lot of times I get stomach aches related to my anxiety like pretty
Yes.
frequently, and so that's like a
Same.
helpful tool for me to realize like, oh, I mean now it's because I feel a parasite inside my body, but unrelated. But
Yes.
like it's like use those things, like you know yourself better than anybody else could know you, so like use those tools at your disposal to
Mhm.
kind of check in with yourself, and then and like talk to somebody, and it could be a therapist, but it could be other people in your life. Like I think more often than not there's a desire to avoid other people as well, and really
Right.
like pull away. But for one, like trauma, I mean, unfortunately trauma is like in a lot of ways a human experience, but I think more so than that it's like pain is a human experience, and humans make mistakes all the time. So like instead of punishing yourself for like the should have, could have, would have's, like how do you move forward and just try to do the best that you can and feel as good as you can about that. It's so
Yeah.
easy for us to look back and be like, oh, I'm a piece of shit, I should have done this. And it's like, well, you can't. So like how
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 can you
are
move
we
on?
going
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
move on from that?
Right.
So and because we only make decisions in each moment based on what we know. So
Mhm.
there's going to be a whole bunch of things that are going to come up in the future, and we don't yet know what those things are, and we will certainly try our best to know. Like in any given moment you're simply trying your best, and like that's all we can do. And it's
Right.
important to like reflect on that and acknowledge that, because like unless you are actually a duty head who's like trying your worst, which I don't think you are,
Right.
then that's something to be proud of, is like I'm just trying my best. I'm making decisions based on all the information at my disposal in this current moment. I'm weighing the pros and cons. Like that's all we can do. So like it doesn't help for us to reflect on the past and have the regret around like I should have done more, I should have made this decision. Like you acted based on what was happening in that moment, and like again also if you've like accepted whatever responsibility you feel like you needed to and like are doing what you can to rectify it, then like that's true, then you're doing everything that you can, and that's
Yeah.
part of doing your best.
Love that. Hashtag doing our best. Like we always
Woo.
like to say. Yes. Fantastic. Thank you for that. Well,
Mhm.
should we rotten tomatin this?
It's
Let's
rotten
do it.
time.
It's rotten time.
It's the Rotten Tomatoes game.
Okay, what do you think this movie has on Rotten Tomatoes? Nikisha, why don't you go first?
84.
All right, Jamie.
76.
74.
Whoa. Okay.
Ay.
But the audience score is a little lower at 62%.
Come
Oh
on,
wow.
people.
Okay.
But the critics' consensus is director David Bruckner makes evocative use of the Scandinavian setting and a dedicated cast to deliver a handsome, if familiar, horror story.
Yeah.
Handsome.
Handsome.
Love it.
All right, what do you think this has on Letterboxd out of 5 with decimal points? Jamie, you go first this time.
I'm gonna guess a 3-4.
All
I'm
right,
gonna do
Nikisha.
3-1.
It's a 3-2.
I almost said 3-2. Oh,
Trust your gut.
damn it.
Don't have
And-
regrets.
Okay.
And
no
here
regrets.
are the most popular reviews. Okay, I need to go to Sweden.
But seriously,
Yeah. This deserves a spot on the quote films that force me to tell men apart for 2 hours list.
I'm screaming.
That's too good.
And the number one review of this one is, fellas, it is gay to wander into a scary ritual forest with other men. I mean, you're basically looking at wood with a bunch of dudes. I don't know. It seems kind of spicy to me.
Amazing.
Love it. Get that spice in there. Yes.
Cool. All right. Let's do the 4 S's.
Yeses.
Skull, scare, shakes, and suggestions. The Talking Horns 4 S's.
Okay, those 4 S's are skulls, scares, shakes, and suggestions. We are going to talk through skulls, which is how well this handles mental health and human behavior. Scares, how scary was this? Shakes, how much, is this a one and done? Does this last for you? And then we'll go through our suggestions. Jamie, why don't you start with skulls and scares
Surely.
and shakes?
Surely I will give you all of those 3 S's. For skulls, I'm going with a 7.5. Because I think just the things that I really enjoy about this movie is how realistic all the characters are.
Yes.
Even in like the shitty decisions that they're making, but just a lot of like the ways that they're talking to one another and their dynamics, it does feel very, very real. And I'm docking points because I'm a duty head and I'm like, well, I wouldn't do those things, so you're wrong.
Don't say that. You're not a duty head.
Thank you.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm allowed to judge. This is my time to judge. That's what the S's are.
This is literally what this is for.
For scares, I actually give this a 5. I think this movie is like pretty scary. Again, I don't like hiking. I mean, I like hiking, but like just the idea that like scary things are in there makes me not really want to be in there.
It's like I
As
would
someone-
do a day hike, but not something that requires me to be in the woods overnight.
No,
thank
no,
you.
no. Yeah, as someone who's like been camping, like the woods are scary. It's a scary place. So, yeah, just like lots of disturbing ambiance. And the monster is terrifying.
Yeah.
For shakes, I'm giving this a 7.5. I've thought about this movie several times over since we first saw it, and I think it's a really solid, like, I think about this movie when I think about David Bruckner. I think it's a really great movie that highlights like, again, if someone's like, oh, what's a good movie that highlights survivor's guilt, watch this movie.
Yeah,
Sure.
absolutely.
Nikisha, what are yours?
Yeah, mine are like very similar. I have a 7 for skulls, 4 for shakes. Sorry, a 4 for scares, and a 7 for shakes. So very similar.
Cool.
For all the same
yeah.
reasons.
I have an 8 for skulls. I have a 5 for scares, and I have an 8 for shakes. I
Nice.
really like this movie a lot.
Yay!
So for suggestions, I happen to have a lot of suggestions. So I'm going to pass it to you two, and I'll just if I'll say mine if they don't overlap. But Nikisha, why don't we start with you? What are some of your suggestions?
I'm sure this is going to be on everybody's list, but The Descent,
Yeah.
Mhm.
As Above, So Below, and Wrong Turn 2021 that we covered that y'all hated, but it has the same vibes.
I want to say, I think about that movie a lot.
Really?
I'm just saying.
Yeah, I do.
Oh, I've
I
like
don't know
literally
why.
never thought about it ever again.
Especially the end with the RV stuff.
Yes.
I think if for whatever reason I think about that movie a lot. I would
so
watch that
funny.
again.
I've really not thought about it.
I just
all.
remember Jamie being like, "What the fuck did I just watch?" But we had a lot to discuss that day. So
We did.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, those are my suggestions. Jane?
I did have The Descent. I also have The Blair Witch Project.
Sure.
I also have Midsommar.
Oh yeah. Sweet.
And I also had to put The Night House as another David
Right.
Bruckner film, just because, like, man, these two movies are true. The Night House is definitely like probably a top 10 favorite horror movie of mine of all time. It's so fucking good.
It's really
it's so good.
Yeah.
And like, if you have not seen this movie, like, you have to watch this movie. It's oh god. But I mean, The Ritual also is like, it's like on the way there to as good as I feel like The Night House is. So both of these are really good double pack.
Definitely.
Good double pack. Yes.
So based off of that, I just want to highlight everything David Bruckner has directed, just because I think we collectively really like him as a director. We also saw him live at Comic-Con for the VHS panel, because I'll start in backwards. For VHS 85, he directed Total Copy, which is the segment that is the framing for 1985 with like the documentary style experiments on the weird alien they found. He directed the new Hellraiser, which I actually have not seen because I don't like the original Hellraiser. But I would watch it.
With an asterisk that we have no nostalgia on this podcast, I think, any of us, for the OG Hellraiser.
No.
So, but like, to each their own. We know people love.
Oh
the
yeah,
Hellraiser
absolutely.
movies.
I've never seen any Hellraiser movie ever, so yeah.
Yeah.
Man, you should watch the first one, because I'm very curious what you would think about it.
Okay,
yeah, and
cool.
and I hear the second one is even better, so I'm interested in watching the second one, and I do want to watch the Bruckner version of one.
Okay.
And then, as we mentioned, it was Night House and The Ritual. Then the anthology movie Southbound, which I would highly suggest. He directs my favorite segment in that, which is The Accident, where a guy hits somebody and then like has to go to an abandoned hospital. It's a spectacular tension filled segment. Then maybe his most famous thing, he did Amateur Night in the original VHS movie, which is the one where the guys go up and pick up that girl, and then chaos ensues.
Yes.
Great segment. And then something that I really like, and this is my suggestion, is it's a 2007 movie called The Signal. It's one narrative all the way through, but each segment is directed by someone different. And Bruckner directed one of the segments in that, and I really like the movie. It's kind of like this signal goes across the TVs and it drives people mad. It's a whole thing, but it's I really like it quite a lot. So I'm going to suggest The Signal.
Nice. That's
Another one I'll suggest is whenever someone says like, what's an underrated horror movie that I should watch that I may not have watched, The Ritual is always on that list, and then movie that we've covered, The Autopsy of Jane Doe, is always on that list. So I'm just going to suggest that in terms of like an underrated 2-pack.
Totally.
Yeah, that's a good 2-pack. Yeah.
Fantastic. 2-packs, yeah.
2-packs. So that wraps up our episode of The Ritual. You can follow us on all social medias, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, at Talk Horror Pod. And producer Brian, where can they listen to us?
You can listen to us wherever you find your podcast, whether it's on YouTube. Hi, YouTube. Hi. We're also on Spotify and, of course, Apple Podcasts. Rate and review us there. 5 stars, please.
And thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Sorry, Brian, were you about to say something?
Well, I was going to say, if a shortcut was actually a shortcut, it would be called a route.
Absolutely. I think that is the moral of that story. Yes. So don't take the shortcuts.
Ever.
Thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.